The score is 10-10. How do you feel? In the National Pickleball League, it's 1st to 11 win by 1.
Tied at 10.
Here we go.
Deep in the corner. Ooh, just deep. Just missed it. Can you believe it? Seattle has it back, and Andren and Lee can't believe it.
At 10-10, if you're serving, are you anxious or are you eager to step up and take the third? If you're receiving, are you tense or are you determined with a plan for where you'll hit the return? How we see these pressure scenarios, whether as a challenge or as a threat, makes all the difference in how we will perform. The good news is we can control how we perceive these pressure situations. And this isn't just a rosy pep talk about the power of positive thinking. In this video, we'll look at what the research shows about factors that dictate how we experience pressure, how this affects us physiologically, and the downstream impact on our focus of attention and performance. Importantly, we'll also review what we can do to shift our perception if we need to, so that we will be our best when the heat is on. Let's get to it. When we're in a pressure or a stress situation, we instinctively and unconsciously assess two things: the demands of the task at hand and whether we have the resources to meet this demand. This is an evolutionary mechanism that helps keep us alive. Researchers emphasize that this demand and resource evaluation is dynamic, and it's influenced by a range of interrelated factors like how much danger there is, uncertainty, unfamiliarity, or familiarity, how much required effort there is with the task, the skills that we have, the knowledge, and the availability of support. So for example, if a tiger suddenly appears on the pickleball court, my system will quickly calculate that the demand to take on this tiger far exceeds the resources I have to escape or to fight it off. So obviously, I will experience this as a threat. If instead I'm in a tight game against evenly matched opponents, or maybe it's a team I've played before, so I have some familiarity and I have a great partner, my system may determine that I have adequate resources to meet the demands of this competition, in which case I'll experience this as a challenge. Our body's initial reaction to both the challenge and the threat scenario is the familiar activation of the sympathetic nervous system, our fight, flight, or freeze response. That triggers release of epinephrine and norepinephrine, the chemical factors we commonly call adrenaline. This increases our heart rate and our cardiac output, which is the volume of blood our heart pumps out each minute. And it also dilates arteries in the rest of our body, which increases blood flow to our brain and our muscles. We're physically primed to act. In a challenge scenario, the response stops here. But when we perceive a situation as a threat, there is an additional neuroendocrine response that increases our cortisol levels and counteracts that initial priming response by constricting peripheral blood vessels and decreasing cardiac output and blood flow. And research has reliably shown that performance is better when we perceive a situation as a challenge rather than a threat. For example, this study put experienced golfers through a pressurized putting test. Those who had the cardiovascular changes consistent with a challenge response sank more putts with fewer errors, and they reported lower anxiety and less conscious processing during the test. In other words, they didn't overthink why they missed a putt. Their movements were more automatic. On the other hand, study subjects who felt threatened by the putting test made more errors, experienced more anxiety, and spent more time analyzing their putting stroke. In any given situation, the demand-resource evaluation will fall along a range, and so challenge and threat are not discrete either-or responses, they are anchors at each end of a continuum. But the key is performance improves in the direction of the challenge response. This raises a critical question. How exactly does this affect performance? What changes as we slide along this scale? It's all about our attention. Our brains have two neural pathways for attention: a top-down, goal-directed system that drives us toward what we want to accomplish, and a stimulus-driven, bottom-up system that filters sensory information about objects in the environment. When we're anxious and under threat, the balance between these two attention pathways is thrown off. Anxiety increases our sensitivity to the stimulus-driven system, so we become more distractible, more vigilant on unnecessary information and dangers in our environment, and we're less able to maintain our goal-directed focus. And this impacts our attention to both external distractions and internal stimuli, like negative thoughts and the sensations in our body. The researchers in the golf study had an interesting way to measure this. They used a mobile eye tracker to monitor gaze during the putts, and they found that the golfers with a challenge response fixated on the ball for a longer duration of time before initiating the putting motion. This is a behavior known as the quiet eye, and it correlates with better visuomotor control. In contrast, the golfers in the threat state had shorter gaze fixations and inferior performance. This same team of researchers replicated these results in senior medical students in a test of laparoscopic surgery skills and in a group of experienced pilots who were presented with a critical engine failure during takeoff while doing a flight simulation. In both studies, not surprisingly, proficiency and performance were better in the challenge response groups, where subjects had better gaze control and fixation on more task-relevant information, while the groups who experienced the test as a threat used suboptimal gaze strategies like random visual scanning, shorter duration fixations, and spending more time fixating on irrelevant information in the environment. Anyone who has experienced sports or other performance-related pressure can undoubtedly relate to this. As our attention increases, we become more aware of external distractions, either off the court or off stage if you're a musician or a dancer, and we may also become more easily irritated by someone in the crowd. Or it could be that the volume of our internal critic in our head becomes louder. Threat and anxiety throw our physiologic response and our focus of attention off track, taking our motor control and performance with it. In the times that we're in the zone, we're able to stay calm, slow things down, and keep a laser focus on the goal at hand. So of course, the most important question is, what can we do? How can we channel these situations as a challenge and not as a threat? Certainly we can try to lower our stress response with relaxation techniques, mindfulness, breathing exercises, which I may cover in a future video. But keep in mind that that initial activation of the sympathetic nervous system helps get us physically primed. So some degree of arousal is necessary for action and optimal performance. An alternative approach is reappraisal of the pressure situation. This can be cognitive reappraisal, where we consciously transform our mental state from anxious to excited, or it can be arousal reappraisal, where we remind ourselves that the charged physical state we're feeling is positive and can be harnessed for our benefit. In this 2014 article, subjects had to sing in front of a stranger while their singing quality was being judged by a karaoke machine. That's stressful. And subjects in another had to give an impromptu speech while their performance was evaluated by the audience. The researchers found that the singers who were instructed to actively reappraise their anxiety as excitement had better singing accuracy compared to those who didn't. And the speakers who focused on being excited rather than calm were rated more highly on multiple measures like confidence, competence, persuasiveness, persistence, and the duration they were able to speak. In a pressure situation, even if your initial instinct is that the demand outstrips your resources and you're feeling the physical effects of a threat, it's still possible to shift toward the challenge response. In the golf study, a group that had the cardiovascular changes of a threat response and the associated poor putting performance in an initial trial then had an arousal reappraisal intervention where they were read a script explaining that the bodily sensations of stress that they were feeling were actually beneficial, and that these physical responses had evolved in our ancestors to help deliver oxygen to areas of their body that they needed to address the stressor and improve their performance. They were instructed to focus on these benefits when they tried the putting test again. And the results after this reappraisal were that their cardiovascular measures had shifted to the challenge response, and they had a corresponding improvement in their putting accuracy. So whether we're changing our thought patterns or the way we look at our physical sensations, reappraisal is a quick and effective way for an athlete to manage stress and maintain focus under pressure. The key is that we're not trying to deny or suppress the anxiety or the bodily sensations, which is futile because these are natural responses to stress. Instead, we're aware of them and just reframing what they mean. And we're also not recalculating the demand resource evaluation, which is immediate and instinctual. What's important is that even if we feel that the demands are too much, even if we're already in a threatened state, reappraisal can help shift us toward that challenge response. And the steps are actually straightforward and simple. When your heart's pounding, your palms are sweaty, your mouth's dry, take a moment and just say, "This is good. My body is primed for action, and this is going to help me do my best." In the singing and public speaking study, the intervention group just stated out loud to themselves, "I am excited." They didn't dwell on the nervousness, and that helped them shift from anxiety to excitement. I have to say, I wish I'd known about these techniques during my years of junior tennis and college tennis when I did often let pressure get the best of me. But when it comes to pickleball, now that I'm a fair bit older, a fair bit grayer, and hopefully a fair bit wiser, feeling challenged is the reason I play. And I hope that's true for you and the vast majority of us who won't ever actually make a living playing this sport. When you really think about it, winning and losing don't really matter. In pressure situations, it doesn't really matter because it's about the journey. It's about learning and growing and especially having fun every time we step on the court. In case you're wondering, here's how my 10-10 game played out.
We have been at 10 all for what, 6 serves?
Yeah.
7 serves? Tension builds.
Oh, there it is. Off a net cord.
All right.
Wow.
11-10.
Wow.